My bottle of chives is empty. Not for long. Welcome to week 4 of the Every Bit Counts challenge. My chives are running low. I have lots in my garden. I might as well harvest them and prep for the winter. I just have a cookie sheet lined with paper towel, and I'm just going to snip these with scissors. It's that simple. Let's get these big pieces out of the way. So I've gone through and I've picked out all the dry bits, all the grassy bits, and I'm just going to start snipping. It's rained recently, and these are for ourselves, so I'm not worried about any dirt or anything that might be on these. Bugs don't seem to like this plant very much. After I get these all snipped, I'm just going to spread them out and let them dry. And that's all there is to it today. It's a quick and easy task to get started, and Sunday is a day of rest, so yeah, this is an easy thing to do on a day of rest. Where would you use chives? We use chives in soup and scrambled eggs, omelets, whatever, and stir fry, sprinkled on top of a salad, and the best of all, sprinkled on a baked potato with sour cream. Anywhere you might want a little hint of onions. They're very mild, but these guys are strong enough to make my eyes water. I have a huge patch of them. I might as well be harvesting them. Why buy it if they're growing free? We were out to the garden today and we had to harvest all of our corn. This is all that we've got from the lower acre, and we had some spaghetti squash that was ready, so now I need to put these away to cure, and we need to do something with this corn. Corn is best the very first day you get it. Process it as quickly as you can, as soon as you can. We had some yesterday and we probably let it go a little past ripe. It was really starchy and sort of tough. I do have some really small cobs in here too, and I didn't know how they were going to be. I've taken this one open and had a look at it, and it's too large to use for baby corn, but it's too small to have any kernel development on it. That would be great for the chickens and the composter. With my spaghetti squash, they've started to change color, although this lighting doesn't show it. They're more yellow than any of the ones that are out in the field. The stems have started to turn a lighter color. They're not green like they were. And the shell of the skin of the squash, I can't damage that with my fingernail. Last week, 3 days ago even, I could dent that if I wanted to. I've got 4 of these. They're going to go into a cool, dry, dark place so that they can stay as long as possible. Let's get this bucket empty. I need the empty bucket to put the corn husks in. I'm going to take this outside. It's less messy in the house if I do it out on the deck. Any scraps will just blow away, and I can have a bucket for putting to the composter. Why am I processing corn in my dining room? Truth be told, my countertop is covered with 45 pounds of potatoes that are curing, and I have zucchini and tomatoes. The tomatoes are just barely starting. This is it, guys. I'm going to be up to my neck in produce for the next 2 weeks. Stick around and watch what happens. I don't have any fancy tools to take the kernels off of my corn. I have a large bowl with a small bowl turned upside down. I don't have a bundt pan because that works too, but this will work. And I just have a short bladed knife, and I'm just going to run my knife down the cob. Between some of these small cobs and the medium-sized cobs and the large cobs, I have about 36 cobs of corn here in quantity. To make cream corn, I just take my blade and run it down the kernels. I'm not not making that for preservation. I'm just going to make that for one meal. If we want cream corn, we can buy cream corn. There we go. More vegetables to go on my shelf. Eleven more cans. Gotta love it. Today's one of those days where I hit the ground running. I have a list of, what, 8 things? 6 things that I have to get done today, plus a couple of phone calls. So come on, let's get right into it. A while ago I did a video on easy peel eggs, even for fresh eggs, up to 2 days new. I'm going to repeat that process here. It's basically, and I'll link the other video below. It's basically a teaspoon of baking soda in every 4 cups of water. This pot is about 3/4 full, so that's a lot of water. I put in a tablespoon today, and I'm just stirring that enough to get that to dissolve. I want to bring that to a full boil. I'm also doing pickled beets today. I've prepped my beets by taking the tops off, and I've left the tails on, so this will bleed less in the water. I'm putting the largest beets in the bottom, and then I'll put the smaller beets on top as we go. Now I'm going to fill that up and bring that to a boil with a lid because it's very messy to pickle beets. So I'm loading these eggs into the pot of boiling water. I might have to take some water out, there's too much there. The danger of this carousel is eggs come flying down it and they bump into each other, and that will crack the eggs. And then they may not store well afterwards. Pickled eggs are not a long-term storage option. They might get us 3 months, but in this house, they won't even last 3 months. Dan eats pickled eggs so fast. Okay, the eggs are in the refrigerator in the ice bath for an hour, and that pot of beets is still not boiling. I should have time to get these tomatoes on the dehydrator tray. I have different sizes of tomatoes. I will put the small tomatoes on one tray and the larger tomatoes on another tray, and the more dense tomatoes on another tray still. I don't want the bad parts. That way I can take the tray of small tomatoes off when it's done, and I can take off the tomatoes as they come dry. It'll take 24 hours. Like any dehydrating project, you want to pretty evenly space your tomatoes and allow a little bit of airflow between them. It doesn't have to be a huge amount. It just, because most products shrink when they dehydrate, it will be fine to have them near each other, but not necessarily touching. You definitely don't want them overlapping. I find a lot of foods dehydrate and they're too small for these holes, and other items stick. Tomatoes have a certain amount of sugar in them or acid in them or whatever it is. They're going to stick, so I've just cut some parchment paper rings to put on there and keep things from sticking. And then it's also not dripping down and getting into the works of the dehydrator engine. If you have any pieces that are skin, you want to put the skin side down so that the tops are exposed, and halfway through we can flip them if we find they're not drying. I still have 25 minutes until the beets are done, and I have a spare tray for my dehydrator. I have 2 large bags of onions. I might as well dice up some onions and throw them on the dehydrator tray. They can go in the oil with the tomatoes as well, and they'll be quite tasty. As usual, I'm putting my leftover onion bits into a bag in the freezer for vegetable broth. Don't waste anything. The onions will go in the oil with the tomatoes, and when the tomatoes are all used up, the onions will still be in the oil, and the oil will be quite flavored. I will use the oil for cooking different stir fries or stews or anything, hamburgers, sloppy joes, anything that needs an onion flavor, and you have to oil the pan. There we go. 2 onions filled the tray. I still have 20 minutes before the beets are ready. Since I have my cutting board out and I still have 20 minutes, I'm going to dice these up and throw them in a baggie, put them in the freezer. We're not getting a large enough jalapeno harvest to do cowboy candy or anything like that with it, so these are just going to go in the freezer. Dan can grab some out, throw it in his ramen, or throw it in a meal anytime he wants. I'm not a huge fan of the heat of peppers, so let's just make this and prepare this for him. And I know I'm not wearing gloves. Not everybody wears gloves when they process peppers. I'm just going to be very careful. Very careful not to touch my eyes. Very careful not to hold, like I'm holding them by the skin, not by the centers. The other day when I did jalapenos, I took out my chopper. I do have projects that need the chopper later today, but at this point I'm already working on 3 projects. I don't want to take on more at this point. I don't multitask well, and I'm amazed that I've gotten as far as I have without having a glitch. I still have 17 minutes for my beets, so I'm just going to squeeze this in quickly and throw them in the freezer. This is not a big task, but it's one that was pressing because these are going bad on the counter. I need to process them, and don't let food go to waste. A handful of minced jalapenos can go in the ramen, or they can be sprinkled on top of pizza, or they can be sprinkled into our burrito bowl night, which is basically rice with all the burrito toppings on top of it. And Dan can have the heat and I can avoid it. And that's that. Put them in a bag. Jalapenos for the freezer. I still have 10 minutes before the beets are ready. I'm going to put my dehydrator tray together, set it to 160, between 140 and 160. So that's pretty high. The machine only goes to 160, and then I'll set this up. I'm gonna set this up, and I'll take a little break because I could use some breakfast. 10 minutes. See you in a bit. I've been gone about 2 minutes. I had a good swig of my smoothie, and I realized I need this big bowl to put my beets in their ice bath. So I need to get these eggs processed and into another container. Let's get to it. This one is obvious. Let's take that shell off right quick. I might not use that for pickling. It's a little bit of a mess, but we can have egg salad sandwiches, or we could have potato salad with eggs. I do have potatoes to use up. That might be a good use for it. Yeah, they're just popping right out of the shell. Let's do one that's not all cracked already. Break the shell in lots of places, and then it's likely to come off easier, and that's not difficult to come off at all. I'll give these all a rinse when I'm done. Right now, I'm going for speed. This could have been from today. We date them when they come in so we know how long they've been on the counter. After a week, they go in the fridge. Okay, that's working the opposite of what I intended. And that's working opposite of what I intended. I've got 5 minutes left. I gotta get this bowl empty. A nice looking egg. I chose to do my pickled beets and my pickled eggs at the same time today because the brine is the same. 2 cups of vinegar, 1 cup of water, 1 cup of sugar, and your pickling spice. I'm going to need a lot more than that, so I'm upsizing my measurements, but it's still going to be a ratio of 2 to 1, and then I'll adjust the sugar. The sugar is for flavor, not for preserving. It's the vinegar that's going to be preserving. So I'm going to go 4 cups of vinegar or more, 2 cups of water, and 1 cup of sugar instead of adjusting that. You can find the recipe for the pickled beet brine in the Bernardin or Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving. And this pickled beets recipe is on page 311. It suggests 2.5 cups of white vinegar, 1 cup of water, and then 1 cup of sugar. So I've fudged that a little, but it'll be still good. You'll want to go with a 5% vinegar or higher. I can't advise you on adjusting the ratios or anything like that because I simply don't know. But we've been hearing reports of vinegar coming in at 4% instead of 5%, so make sure you're looking for the right ratio of vinegar. 4 cups of vinegar, 2 cups of water, 1 cup of sugar, and as much pickling spice as you want. I like a lot. You can wrap the pickling spice in a piece of cheesecloth or a coffee filter and wrap a string around it, or you can put it right in the bottle or right in the pot. I don't mind either way. I'm going to put this in the pot because it actually brings out the flavors when it gets heated. I put some extra pickling spice in the jar for the eggs as well. It will just sit in there and it'll brine with them for a while. I'm going to crank this up and bring it to a boil. I did rinse the eggs off again and they've just been in the fridge. I'm not going to put broken eggs in there, just whole eggs. Egg salad sandwiches, anyone? Wow, it's fragrant in here now. Because my brine is straight off the boil, I've run my jar under hot water to temper the glass a little bit so that it's able to handle the heat without bursting. Which basically just warmed up the glass from the outside under hot running water. I want to get a canning funnel. You know, one of those big long ones with the very pointed end on it? I've seen a few other homesteaders use them on their channels, and I think that would be great. Okay, in this process you want to make sure your eggs are covered, and we'll give that a little couple of things. I'm going to wipe the rim with water to make sure that it's not sticky on top. It's not that I need it to seal, but I don't want the lid to get stuck. Because this is not a canning process, this is just going in the fridge. I'm going to give that a shake, make sure all the air bubbles have come out. And we're still above the water. Oh. Ah, that's hot. The eggs are completely submerged. I'm going to put in like 1 more teaspoon. 1 more teaspoon of water there. Brine. Okay, I'm going to leave that on the counter to cool off enough so that I can put it in the fridge and it won't wreck my fridge temperature. And that's that. 28 pickled eggs are done. Looking at this, I can see that's not enough brine for my pickled beets. I'm going to put another 2 cups of vinegar and another 1 cup of water. Maybe a few tablespoons of sugar. The next stage of this process is to bring that brine back up to a boil, let it simmer so that the mulling spices go through it. Then I will be putting my beets in there, so I have to prepare the beets first. You have them, I boiled them. You know I was boiling them earlier. You slice off the top, you slice off the bottom, and any marrs any bad marks. And the rest just peels off in your hand. You could wear gloves if you like. I don't care if people can see that I've been pickling beets today. There's a little mark there. I'm going to peel the slice, take that off. And then you can cut them, cube them, or slice them, or whatever you prefer. I like to make my pickles slices and my holes, or my not pickled, in cubes. Then I can look at a jar on the shelf and know at a glance that the slices are the pickles. Okay, my brine is boiling over here. I'm going to let it go for a couple of minutes again so that the seasoning blends all the way through. When I'm making pickles, I like to use a wide mouth jar. I have them sitting in the sink in hot water right now. They're clean already. I've got them in the hot water, so again, I can put hot brine right into them. Okay, I've finished peeling my beets. This will go to the chickens. They'll love it. The bowl is empty because I put everything in the pot and I have to bring that back up to the boil. I'm also going to put my canning lids in a bowl of hot water. They don't need to be boiled anymore, just clean. And the hot water is still something that's a hangover from my years of canning. I just put them in there alternating up and down so that they don't stick together. And then I pour just hot tap water on them. Normally I use a very bright white towel under my canning, but beet juice, no, maybe not. I'm going to put them on a dark towel so that if the beet juice stains it, it won't matter. Okay, my beets are boiling. I've just shut them off. I'm going to move this onto the countertop, and I'm going to move my large canner onto that burner to start getting hot. I have to water bath can these jars for another 30 minutes after I'm done canning them. If you live in an area with high calcium in the water, you might want to throw a splash of vinegar in there so your jars don't get all chalky. So I'm ladling these into the jar and I'm leaving a generous ½ inch of headspace. Some of these slices are pretty thick, so I might have to go closer to 1 inch, but that's okay. After I've got that ½ inch of headspace in there, with the beets, I'm going to top it up with the brine. Ideally, covering the beets completely. There we go. Some of these beets are pretty large. Since it's mostly me that's going to be eating them, I don't mind. I have enjoyed pickled beets my whole life. I remember my mom making pickled beets. Just once maybe, but I remember. But I also remember my mom making jam and using wax to seal it. So I know that the techniques have updated a lot since then. Like any canning project, you need to wipe the rim of the jar to make sure there's no food particles on it. And this brine has sugar in it, so it's going to be especially sticky. We don't want that to ruin the seal. Because there's vinegar in this, we can water bath can it. It is acid enough that we can water bath can instead of pressure can. These lids feel thick. I'm used to dealing with regular size. These are largemouth. I just store my canning rings on a big piece of ribbon. I've got a loop on the top and I hang it off a hook in my pantry. The bottom one I tied on so that nothing will go past it. I spilt some brine under the burner. Hubby's coming to see what I'm burning. You want to take a debubbling tool and make sure there are no bubbles trapped underneath of your pickles. You don't want a big air pocket in there. Any utensil will work. A skewer, a debubbling tool specifically made for canning, whatever works. You just don't want to nick your jar and put it at risk. Now I do have some material, some beets and a bunch of brine left in the bottom of this. but my canner is going to be full. I'm going to jar those up and put them in the fridge and eat them in the next few days. Again, we're going to wipe the rim. I think this. So that's 8 jars. I need a little more water. It should be cover the jars by 1 inch. Okay, they have to water bath. I have to bring that back to a boil. They have to water bath for 30 minutes. That gives me time to have lunch. There we go, 8 jars of pickled beets, refrigerator pickles, pickled eggs, jalapenos, and tomatoes on the dehydrator. That's a good morning. Remember to stop by and visit Jessica at Three Rivers Homestead for the Every Bit Counts Challenge. See you next time, guys.